Hey friends, welcome back. I hope you're having a great week. And today what we're going to talk about is a really practical piece of starting your first budget and getting your plan off the ground, off the paper, and into real life. Because this is one of the areas I absolutely struggled with because I didn't know how to set this up. So I struggled with this. And that is, how do you actually turn a budget into a real life plan? So it looks great on paper, in theory, right? It's a month's view. You have an assignment for every dollar. You're ready to go, but then it's like, wait a minute. I get paid weekly or bi-weekly or bi-monthly. How do I turn that monthly plan into one that works based on my paychecks? This is especially true if you're trying to get out of that habit of swiping your credit card to help cushion the blow of, in a typical month, you don't have the same expenses every single week. So when you're first trying to get off of spending everything on credit cards and you want to rein it back in and take control of your finances by being intentional about how you're spending your money, one of the first steps is create a plan that's based on the income you make. And a great way to start is base it on the income you make each paycheck. So have a paycheck view of your budget. So whether you get paid weekly, bi-monthly, or bi-weekly, line up a view of your budget based on your paychecks. And why this is important is if you get paid weekly or bi-weekly, in those two scenarios, there are some months when you have an extra paycheck. And what oftentimes is easy to do is say, I'm going to take my whole salary or my whole pay and I'm going to divide it by 12. But in those months where you have the extra paycheck, you don't want to include that extra amount in your budget for months where that paycheck doesn't exist. You want to plan for it when it exists. So the way I like to coach is plan your budget based on the least amount of paychecks you'll have. So if you're weekly, plan your budget based on 4 weeks. If you're bi-weekly, plan your budget based on 2 paychecks a month. So when you first start out, you're doing a zero-based budget, which is you start with your income, and then you give every dollar an assignment, which includes giving, saving, and spending, not just spending. It doesn't mean you're spending every dollar down to zero. It means you have a plan for every dollar. So there are $0 left at the end of the month without a job to do. Every dollar has a job. The next pain point that you'll feel if you're starting this for the first time is you'll all of a sudden notice that your bills might be crammed in more heavily at certain times of the month. So if you're trying to get on a cash basis budget, get off the credit cards, get onto cash spending, only living on what you make, that's where you'll feel the pinch. You might notice that a lot of your bills are concentrated at the beginning of the month, and it doesn't leave a whole lot left for daily, everyday living. So that's why it's so important for once you have a budget on paper, like a monthly view, it always helps to do a bigger zoomed out view. So all your income, all your expenses for the month. Next step, slice it up by paycheck. That's important. So you can actually see which bills land at which paycheck. And you can use your next month as an example. Use something that's actual. Say, okay, I'm going to look at next month's dates. I know when those paychecks are coming. I know when my bills are due because you have due dates. Just line them up. And if you get to the bottom where you're taking your income and subtracting your spending, saving, and giving plan, and you have a negative number, it means you got to do some rearranging. So you're not going to start your budget if you have negative numbers between paychecks until you do a little planning. So one of the fastest ways you can adjust for this is call your bill pay companies up, whoever they are, and ask them if you can move the bill pay date. And that first 3 months is a little bit choppy because you're finding a new rhythm. So you have to watch it a little bit more closely just at first. But once you get into a rhythm, it's going to feel like set it and forget it. So if you have a bunch of bills that are coming out in that first paycheck and you don't have a whole lot left for daily living, figure out which ones will help create more space between paychecks. Move some out or move some back, whatever you need to do. If you have more bills at the end of the month, move some back. Another pro tip that I love to share is because our daily living tends to be a more urgent need in the moment because, you're buying groceries, gas, sometimes your weekly rhythms are different. you can push your bills towards the end of the month. It just means you have to stay disciplined with your spending on everything else. So that's why a budget is so important. You know what your spending boundaries are because you've given yourself permission to spend a certain amount on certain things. A budget is very freeing because you don't feel chaotic. Like you don't know if spending money on this is going to sabotage the end of your month or if you're not going to have enough for bill pay. So make the plan first and then time it out. So the other piece of this is when you're first starting, again, we think about our budgeting in increments of like the current calendar month. But if you think about, if you get paid weekly or bi-weekly, the pay date isn't always the first of the month. Oftentimes, if you're bi-monthly, it is. But if you're any of those other two categories, it's tricky. And it's hard to know, like, okay, how do I get this thing off the ground? So think about your last week of the last month as being the beginning of your new month's budget. So you're now setting yourself up to be a week ahead of yourself. That way, whatever expenses come through from the first of the month or to whatever the 7th day is or the 14th day, whenever your paycheck cycle is, you've already got enough set aside to cover you right from the beginning of the month. So you don't have to worry about if your paycheck comes in a few days, that first paycheck of the month. You're actually going to just bump it back, still planning on the same number of paychecks, but it's going to be the 4th week of last month, and then the 1st, 2nd, 3rd. There you go, 4 fingers. And then the last week of the month bumps you up for the beginning of the following month. So you're creating space and breathing room in your budget by pre-funding the beginning of your month with the last week's paycheck. Again, you have to think about the rhythms in your life and what you have coming in. It might take you a couple months to get to a point where you're ready to do this. A great way to do this is in one of those months where you have an extra paycheck, use that as the month where you kickstart your budget. If you're getting taxes back, if you get periodic bonuses, whether it's quarterly or at the end of the year, if you're on salary, that's often the case. But wherever you know that you're going to have some money, look at that first week's of expenses or that first paycheck's worth of expenses. And that's your target. That's the starting point you want to have saved or like buffered for the beginning of the month. So these are the things that don't really get broken down when you're first starting a budget. So what happens is you bump into a roadblock and you're like, shoot, I didn't see this coming. And you find yourself having to swipe the credit card to cover a bill that you're going to still try to pay at the end of the month. It starts to feel really messy. And you're like, I give up, forget it. I don't have time for this. I quit. My recommendation on this is don't quit. I can recommend that. Don't quit. When I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't give financial advice. This is education based on my experiences and what's worked for people that I work with. But the first 3 months, the 3-month rule, it always is hard when you're starting something new, especially month 2. You're going to want to quit on month 2. I guarantee it. But that's when you're going to buckle down and push through because you already know your why. You know why you're doing this. You know what you're doing is going to get you to a place where you can do more of what matters most. This isn't just getting on a budget to get on a budget because that's not that fun. But when you get on a budget because you know it's helping you design your finances and align your finances in a way that's going to get you out of debt, which is going to put more options on the table. It's going to create more margin so you're able to plan for things that are important for you where instead of everything shouting at you, you're now in control saying, I'm going to decide what I spend my money on. You're lining yourself up to get back in control in the driver's seat of your money. At first, you're going to still feel very reactive. You still have to pay the bills that are coming in. But when you come up with a plan to create financial space in your budget, you're going to now start paying off debt. You're going to have an emergency savings. You're going to start making a plan for the things that matter most. So you might start planning 3 to 6 months emergency savings because you don't want to have to slave with overtime the rest of your life. You want to have options to be like, nope, I'm good. I don't need to sacrifice my life to save my job. I can get another job if this job isn't working for me and my lifestyle and what's important to me. Having just that freedom is so awesome. A lot of times we stick with jobs that are unfulfilling. We put dreams on pause because they're unfulfilling, not because the dreams are unfulfilling. We put dreams on pause for a job that's unfulfilling. Let me clarify that. Because I've been there. I know what that feels like. And it feels like forever away that you're going to get things back on track. So that's the importance of being very clear on why you're doing this. Put that thing in front of you, whether it's a picture of your family or an ideal job or time that you'll get to spend volunteering with a passion or doing more of what you love, a hobby or something, whatever it is. Make it something worth fighting for, because you do have to fight for it a little bit, especially at the beginning. Eventually you get rhythms. I always get on a soapbox in this category because it's just so important. You have a purpose that's been put on your life, and it's sometimes just, you feel it, it's locked inside. It's hard for you to step out into that purpose because the rhythm of your finances feels like you're stuck. You're feeling stuck in the everyday grind. It's hard to get out. This is one of the best first steps I remember taking was, okay, I'm coming up with a plan, and at first I have to get a little bit granular. I have to babysit my money a little bit while I get systems in place to help me automate my spending habits, whether it's putting money in a certain account to make it easier so I don't have to track every transaction. I know that that account has my budget for the month, and when it's low, and when it's gone, it's gone. So I'm hoping just to bring a really practical piece of education around how to get a budget off the spreadsheet, off the paper, and into real life working for you. So split your plan up by paycheck, line your expenses up by paycheck, and at first you might have to piecemeal some of your daily living. You might have to have a little more discipline with your food spending or transportation. You might have to do that until you can create that buffer to be able to, put more money into those areas earlier in the month. And that's a great way to do it. If you push the expenses to the end, you have more, your bill paid to the end, you have a little more room for the rhythm of daily living, but you have to stick with those numbers, because if you overspend, you're going to be spending your bill pay money, right? So it's got to come from somewhere. That's the practical reality is if you don't have it, you have to find a way to cover it. And you're choosing to not do that on credit cards anymore. You're not going to pay for yesterday's expenses, consumable expenses, depreciating expenses on credit cards, because you're stuck paying for those choices and those expenses for years ahead, past when those things brought you joy, right? So I hope you get out there, get after it, put it in the comments if I confused you. I want you to feel clear and confident. I tend to nerd out on things like this, so I might go on little tangents, but please put it in the comments if there's an area that you feel would benefit you for me to share more on, to expand more on. Or shoot me an email, leah@moneywisemom.com. You can jump on my website, moneywisemom.com. There's a contact me button. That'll also get you to me. I want to help you take control of your finances, and I want you to know that it's possible, that there's hope, and that you do it one baby step at a time. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Thanks for being here with me. Get after it and slay the day. All right, bye for now.